I think we can start with a warm welcome to you all, our wonderful panelists, as well as all of you who decided to join us for this IFSAM online research panel on AI frontiers in management research, embracing possibilities, governing perils. My name is Silvia Svejanova, and I am Vice President of Research at IFSAM and professor at the Copenhagen Business School. And I'm delighted to co-host this event with my great colleague, Christine Moser, who is Deputy VP of Research at IFSAM and also Associate Professor at Free University Amsterdam. So thank you so much, Christine. Before we dive into this topic, which has so many twists and turns and potential for discussion, I would like to just say a few words about IFSAM in case some of you may not have had the opportunity to engage with us. IFSAM is a federation of scholarly associations in management, organization, administration, and it is something like United Nations of academic associations, as we like to say. It has been established in 1990. We are based in Brussels, and we have 29 associations across all continents, and PAD among them. Alketa will be representing one of these associations, among many others, 29 members and one observer. And what IFSAM tries to do is to bring collaboration and conversation across different academic associations, especially on issues that matter to us. And 2 years ago, right after the pandemic, we came with a soft policy positioning paper on research where we outlined the issues that matter to us and that we care about. And this year we have updated them with 7 commitments to action. And one of these commitments is precisely to engage with collective navigation of new frontiers. And last year, these new frontiers had to do with open science, with what scholarly impact does to our profession, to universities in general. And this year, we inevitably have to engage also with the new frontier that generative AI and related opportunities and perils represent. So with this panel, we want to bring many diversities. We want to bring the researchers who research topics like that. We want to bring editors of journals. We want to bring leaders of scholarly associations, and not least the publishers who are also very much vested in this new and dynamic frontier. So without further ado, I will pass it on to Christine, who will introduce the topic and our great panel for you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sylvia, and hi from my side. Very nice to see so many of you on this cold, at least here in the Netherlands, cold Monday afternoon. My name is Christine Moser. I am, together with Sylvia, thinking about how to use this global platform of IFSAM for exploring new pathways. And today our seminar will be, as you know, about AI. And the motivation here for this is that, first of all, of course, people really jumped on the bandwagon in our field and have started to publish lots of papers, books, articles, and so on in our outlets. We have also seen quite a few editorials on the topic in the last 12 months. Only quite a few came out, triggered by the emergence of Chat-GPT, of course. And this will not be the end. And I see some people who either have written about it or are very interested from the editorial position. So let's hope that today we can talk a bit more in depth about this. And today's goal really is to explore or to hear from from different stakeholders in our field, how they think and discuss about AI in management research. So today we have 4 speakers. First, we have Christina Alaimo. She is an assistant professor in digital economy and society at Luis Guido Carli University in Rome, which is very beautiful. I accidentally visited, by the way, last week, Christina. She has got her PhD from London School of Economics, and in her research looks at innovation and database services and what this means for organization society. Very warm welcome, Christina. And then from Brazil, we have Alketa Pecci. Peki. I actually do not know. I only know how to pronounce your first name. You will introduce yourself. Aketa is a professor of public administration and government at Fundação Getúlio Vargas, and she's also editor-in-chief of the Brazilian Journal of Public Administration, and she is the president of ANPAD, which is the Brazilian Academy of Management. She's also a member of the Committee of Experts on Public Administration at the United Nations. Very warm welcome, Aketa, and clearly you will be able to share different roles and different expectations and experiences about AI in your talk. We also welcome Professor Renate Meyer. She's a professor and chair of organization studies at Vienna University of Economics and Business, and a professor of institutional theory at Copenhagen Business School. She was editor-in-chief at Org Studies until very recently. She was also a chair of EGOS. And right now she is the co-founder and also co-spokesperson of the OMEN network, that stands for the Organization and Management Editors Network. Renate is also on the IFSAM's Research Committee, and thank you for joining us today, and welcome, Renate. And finally, we have as a fourth speaker, Ziad Marar. He is the president of global publishing at Sage Publishing. His academic background is in the philosophy and psychology of language, which of course is super relevant and interesting right now, given these large language models that we will also talk about. Recently, he has focused on supporting the social sciences more generally, and he also serves on the board of the Campaign for Social Science. Ziad is also an author and has written 4 books where he combines his interest in psychology and philosophy. So all 4 of you, thank you very much for joining us today. We have quite a global event, so that's really cool. Welcome also our new guests and visitors and audience. And without further ado, I give the floor to Christina. Christina, as the first speaker, thank you.
Thank you very much for this nice introduction and for inviting me to this panel. So thank you, Christine and Sylvia, for organizing this. This for me was a very good occasion to reflect on something, and today my presentation will be actually offer you some reflection on this general idea of how do we work as researcher with AI. So, and hope you all see my screen and fantastic. So yeah, I have 10 minutes and the program is today is to raise and to critically frame my 10 minutes around the discussion between researching with AI versus researching on AI. And that's because I found out that very much, many times the subtle difference is not clear. So we tend to sort of kind of overlap the two things, which are of course interacting, very much so, but at the same time they are different. There are subtle differences. And my reflection today will be really around what are the differences between researching with AI? What are the similarity between researching with and researching on AI, but also what are the challenges and opportunity if we disentangle some of these differences and similarity, and how are they changing right now that AI, of course, is becoming very much present, not only within our object of research, so within our interest, let's say, but also within our tools. And that's what the difference is about. So my overall question is really, okay, I don't have, that's fine. I don't have the mouse. Is management research changing because we use AI in our research, or because AI is increasingly becoming the object of our research? For researching with AI, I really mean how organization and individual act with tools, but also media, such as machine, but also behavioral schema, script. So think about acting with things, but also with concepts with media, with cognitive schema, and so on. And that's what I mean with researching with AI. Instead, with researching on AI is really the idea of sort of acting on something. So thinking about AI as a new field of interest, or think about management-related topic, and AI and the interaction between the two. So think about resources such as content, skills, and knowledge, but also topic, for instance. You can think about, to further qualify this difference, you can think about the way in which AI is embedded already in many of the object devices and system. Organization and individual, like research institution, of course, education institution, and us, use every day. We are already every day using many tools, media, and also cognitive schema that are embedded with AI application or AI tools. Our mobile phone or PC, they have both hardware and software, which are increasingly empowered by AI, and we do use them for our research every day. But also, of course, as we go out in the field and we research organization, we found out that many processes, practices, and operation across different kind of organization. So not only traditional, let's say, formal organization, but also novel form of organization like platform, groups, community, they have been already transformed because of the presence of AI. In processes or practices. And you can think, from hiring processes and customer services to, the kind of public and private services that many organizations, different kind of organization offers. So what are the challenges of researching with AI? And what you see there are object recognition technique that look for muffins. So it's just a, sort of provocation to see that we have done a lot of work, but there are, of course, still work to be done. So what's the challenge of embedding some of these tools and media in our own research practices? The challenges are to take, and that's what we often see by looking at Chat-GPT, for instance, to treat application as if they were the whole technology. So we often find ourselves thinking about AI in sort of application-based term, if I may say so. We take an application or a tool such as Chat-GPT and we talk about AI. This is a challenge because, of course, we tend to narrow down or reduce something which is much broader and complex to the single or individual application. We tend also to forget the most recent past. This is what I found. I mean, some of these tools, they have already been embedded and used in computational social science, at least for the last 10 years. And we have debated the challenges and opportunity of using computational social science in our research, to what extent data taken from social media, for instance, are representative of social phenomena, to issues of authorship or interpretability of processes. Some of these debates do recur now that we talk about generative AI. So I think it's good to sort of, think in sort of longer perspective. The third challenge that I see researching with AI is the lack of shared frame of definition. We tend to sort of take for granted that we all share common definition of AI, but this is not the case, not even for the very sort of computer scientists who use AI in their everyday work. At the same time, we tend to go for the most famous kind of visible application or tools, but by doing so, many of the less visible tools remain invisible, but still we continue to use them in our research. And the fourth, I see the lack of knowledge on the institutional antecedent and technological transformation in education and research. So in our own institutions, in our own organization, what have been the processes, the institutional processes the organizational processes that have brought us to go for some solution and not for others when we talk about researching with AI, when we talk about incorporating some of these tools and media in our research practices. What's going on if we leave for a moment this researching with and we think about researching on? How much management research is changing because of AI sort of explosion in organization and society, and what are the challenges that we confront there? So to me, this is the main question when I reflect around this topic, and the reflection that I would like to offer today to the panel is, how does AI redefine management research and its relevance or impact? So what do we need to question ourselves as a researcher when we confront these problems, and along which lines? Of course, as the adoption of AI across sector and processes increases, we found ourselves studying AI, so that we cannot avoid, in one way or in another, we do find ourselves confronting issues that relate to AI. But to what extent we should know how AI works, for instance? I mean, to what extent we should go down and really look at, opening the sort of black box and try to understand how this very complex system works. What is the boundary here? When we should stop? We are not computer scientists. We cannot cover all the ground there, but at the same time, we should have competence if we want to talk about how organization and management research change, because otherwise we risk the opposite. We risk remain on a too general level and not to say anything relevant for organization and for society as well. And the second big point that I would like to sort of raise is, does studying an application suffice to claim knowledge on AI transformative capacity? I mean, we do go in organization and we study organizations, we study management practice, but by doing so, it means that we study specific application in specific context. Does this still help us understanding a general, the broader view, a general and more sort of general, issue related to how AI transform management research, how AI transform organization? To what extent we can say something back to more sort of broader issue, broader topic? What you see there is the ImageNet database that has been used to train object recognition AI technology, and it has been very much studied. And this is a little bit what I mean also by studying and unpacking what is behind the black box of AI. So in the interest of time, I would like to close now by instead, opening up to the opportunities that instead we confront as researcher, researching with and researching on AI. And I see the biggest opportunity in us redefining the boundaries between the two. As we do incorporate AI tools and application in our research, we need to reflect on what does that mean for our own work, for our own knowledge, methods, practices. How do we share what we learn by using this tool? And this is the way I see in which the researching on and researching with perhaps interact and maybe blur, and they can one help the other. And I have a small quote for one of the papers that has been recently published on embedding generative AI in research processes. I can perhaps also share, is on ISR, but I can perhaps share the quote, which I really like, because it says, we need to reflect on how we construct meaning through this tool, and how this meaning feedback on the topic we do research. And then the final point, I see another big opportunity in repositioning management research at the forefront, finding its own field perspective within the study of AI on organization. By gaining its original perspective, I think management research can have an impact and can really position itself at different tier of AI. By gaining historical and institutional perspective, studying the evolution of technology in organization. For instance, I mean, I just proposed 3 paths, but of course there can be tons of other. But I see this missing right now, the political economy of AI, taking an institutional perspective in the study of technologies. This is something that we very much have the skills, tools, and tradition to contribute to. And then final one, also going beyond situatedness. As management researcher, we can accumulate knowledge on the difference and similarity across specific contexts, and perhaps give back, you know, a sort of organization-based or management-focused perspective on the study of the change triggered by AI that can feed back to practitioners, but also to regulators. And they very much need so, particularly in this moment. With this, I close. Thank you so much. And I hope this can raise some nice discussion later on in the panel.
Thank you very much, Christina. This was, I think, a really good kickoff to our meeting, very thought-provoking. And I really like how you put these developments in a historical perspective. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
By the way, we will have plenty of time at the end so the last 30 minutes are devoted to questions and discussions. So please, if you have questions, you can either put them in the chat right now, or just keep them, and we will open up for discussion after all the speakers have had their say. And now I would like to invite Alketa. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Christine and Sylvia, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with all of you, my great esteemed colleagues from IFSAM and other associations, as well as the members of our association who are attending us today. So this is a very provoking topic, and I would like to start my reflection kind of, clarifying my definition of what is artificial intelligence. So I do understand artificial intelligence as machine performing cognitive functions, which are usually associated with human minds. I'm referring to learning, to interacting, or problem solving. So of course, most of these activities are there in our research, in our teaching, in our training programs. And I do see a space for interaction between, the topics that we are talking today. So I'd like to, I'm seeing this as a conversation. Of course, we've seen in the last 10 years a huge growth in the use of artificial intelligence in our research. And I'm referring specifically to supervised or unsupervised learning techniques. And of course, we also know that researchers, not just in social sciences, but in natural sciences, are particularly aware of the opportunities, but also of the dangers that came with the use of artificial intelligence. I found very interesting some data about a Nature survey that was done interdisciplinary across many fields, where most of the researchers claim that AI tools can be used to can lead to more reliance on pattern recognition without proper understanding. And I do think that this is particularly relevant for the type of research that we do in management, public management fields. Others are worried about the bias or discrimination in the data. This has been particularly highly focused research study in our fields, and more than 50% considered that the use of artificial intelligence can lead to irreproducible research. So I mean, of course, I do think that we have now a lot of information to understand that artificial intelligence is changing the way that we can do research. We are doing research in our field. I myself have been particularly impacted by the use of these technologies in qualitative research. Now we have, data, we have information that we can explore based on the new technologies that came with artificial intelligence. And I'm referring, for example, to topic modeling, to unsupervised models of artificial intelligence, which are very interesting for qualitative research, but of course, do not reduce the role of the human researchers, of human understanding, which I do think is particularly telling when we see that everybody's worried about this question in qualitative and quantitative research. Another question of concerns has to do with the fact about the regulation of artificial intelligence and how the regulation of artificial intelligence connects with other types of regulation, such as data transparency or personal data protection laws. So this is particularly important because I think researchers are facing double, pressures. So, on one hand, we have the opportunities that might come from using artificial intelligence technologies. On the other hand, we have particularly the data protection laws that kind of, are going on the opposite direction. What we've seen, and I'm worried about this topic in contexts like Brazil, we are seeing a very stringent position of our IRB boards, institutional review boards. So it's a paradox. We're facing a very huge paradox where, you're kind of stimulating to rely on external data sources, huge data sources that can be accessed through AI technologies. On the other hand, we have more stringent and more restricted policies about, contact with human subjects. For example, in the case of our IRB at the Getúlio Vargas Foundation, we are borrowing from the health sector. So nowadays, if you want to conduct interviews or survey data with human beings, you need to, you have a very limited positions, very limited, you have restrictions, a lot of restrictions that kind of inhibit you from, going to direct contacts with human subjects. And this is very worried, because we work with humans, we work with organizations, and we still need contact with the organizations. Of course, another worrying trend that I'm seeing, particularly in data originated from developing countries, has to do with prejudice about the sources of data that come from developing countries. We've seen that in a lot of research. Reviewers that question the quality of data that comes from countries like Brazil or other developing countries of the world, when theoretically you can test the quality of the data, having transparent data sources and transparent data analysis. But I do think that we still face a huge burden in terms of reproducibility and transparency of the data worldwide. Another question that I focused in my reflection about artificial intelligence, I think Christina already talked about it. It's about the demand to collaborate across disciplines. Of course, in our field, we are not experts in techniques or technologies of artificial intelligence. So there is a huge demand for collaboration across many different disciplines and collaborations with other researchers from applied mathematics, computer science, etc., etc. And we do see a lot of this collaboration growing worldwide. However, clear guidelines need to be established to defend, intellectual property rights, data ownership, and the sharing of AI models and code among researchers, particularly when we talk about collaborations across the disciplines. And again, here another topic of that worries me is the power of big corporations such as Microsoft and Google in owning the data, handling the data, and giving access to the data to researchers in an unequal form across the globe. Of course, I think I will finish with these reflections. I do see that all of these perils and dangers of artificial intelligence open huge new venues for research in our field. And I think Christina also talked about these issues. So I do see a lot of space to study, to understand, to better understand how humans, organizations, and societies interact with artificial intelligence. So there is a space, to take those challenges as a theoretical and empirical unit of analysis. I do see a growing trend to focus on data bias and fairness. So I've seen a lot of research being published around these issues. But of course, based on what we've seen in the published research within the last 10 years, I would say, I do see also a lot of other venues of research being open from the artificial intelligence use in our organizations, societies, and their impact on human beings. So I'll finish here and then continue the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alketa, for joining us again, and also for bringing a different perspective from the usual Western developed countries one. So I think this is super important and very much needed, and it really connects the critical voices that we see quite often really to the ground and to what it means for actual researchers in these countries. All right, I want to give the word to Renate Meyer, who is, well, I've introduced you already, so I'll leave the rest to you, Renate. Welcome.
Right. Thanks a lot, Sylvia and Christine and IFSAM, for hosting this panel and for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here and to be on this panel. It's been almost a year now since Chat-GPT has been released, and I think that we all have seen a lot of energy in the last 12 months going into studying the impact that generative AI and large language models are going to have on the production and the consumption of scholarly knowledge. And I think so this last year probably has been a huge hype. And although I agree with Christina that AI has been in use for many years in many forms, ChatGPT probably has boosted a lot of energy in that direction. Generative AI has been the object of research a lot, and the subject and the tool. And I can refer to what Christina said. And also there's fluid boundaries between the three now. So on with, can ChatGPT an author? Is it not an author? Is it only a tool, etc.? And I think in the last 12 months, we have seen a lot of research on the technological sides, all the biases, the black boxes of algorithms, the unclear way in which LLM models use, store, process data. We have heard a lot about the problems about intellectual property rights, confidentiality, legal liability, and accountability, like who's responsible in cases of misconduct and mistakes even. Issues of equality, the impact that generative AI will have on professions in the sense of commodification, deprofessionalization, and all these kind of things have been on the radar of scholarship. We've discussed what this means for the production of knowledge in the sense of like researcher teams. So what do we do if we have an algorithm as a team member? Does that change the composition of the team, the decision-making of teams? What is AI used for? Is it used for novel insights? Is it used for communication of insights? Can it be legitimately used for auxiliary tasks like, I don't know, language editing, which has been done and outsourced for a really long time? Is it okay to do a literature review? Is it okay to brainstorm with generative AIs? Is it okay to ask for a text in order to overcome a writing blockage? Is AI used actually for the research process, for the editing process, or for the reviewing process? So do we get reviews written by algorithms? I think we've heard a lot about epistemological and ethical issues. We've heard a lot about trust issues, and I think it's particularly interesting to have a look at the relationship between generative AI increasing and the trust in cultural institutions at the same time eroding. So what is the relationship between these two developments? We've been encouraged to look at the relational infrastructure of knowledge production at all the institutions that underpin our scholarly systems, from all kinds of philosophical perspectives, from pragmatism, humanism, post-humanism, from all kinds of theoretical angles, from institutional theory, practice theory, to actor network theory, and many more. So I think there's a huge amount of really excellent research being done, and each of these pieces is so interesting, and it speaks to our core way of doing and producing insights and research. I think when we look at the debate around generative AI, we also see a lot of different types of actors who speak out. And we have like the individual researchers, we have the editors clearly, we have universities. Almost each and every one of them has to issue a kind of policy with regard to how AI can be used. We have the Committee on Publication Ethics. So COPE has issued several statements on AI recently. I think only 5 within the last 12 months. We have governments, we have the EU, we have the United Nations. So there is like all kinds of actors who are involved in this debate. And when we look at the positions that these actors take on the different issues here, you have a broad spectrum here, from the idea that there is like nothing new and technology has always been used and natural language processes has been there for decades. So generative AI is basically just a new step. So it's unavoidable and things will unfold. So that the classical laissez-faire, to demands for transparency and, for example, watermarking, to demands to ban the use in publications altogether. So the spectrum is really broad. And I think if we would do a little survey among the people here in this room, we would have a huge variety of different views of what it means and what we should do. So given all these kind of variety and multiplicity of voices and views and topics, generative AI is an almost classical example for an anticipatory governance gap. And so what does that mean? That means that currently we're all producing imaginaries of the intended and unintended consequences that these technologies will have on our own scholarly system, but on society at large more broadly. But as with other innovations, the actual consequences, we cannot see them on the drawing board. So, but only when they actually unfold and when these things are implemented. And this makes it very difficult to agree on a regulation in the early phase of the innovation cycle. Because people are curious, everybody wants to test it out and see how it unfolds. We have a lot of different stakeholders. Experts are fragmented, they're dispersed across various areas, they are in disagreement, and it's altogether unclear who's actually entitled to rule or regulate in an area like this. Later, when we have more systematic knowledge on the consequences, on the costs and benefits, these tools, they have become part of the general infrastructure, and people use them and they don't want to give them up anymore. And you have powerful interests like corporations that are vested in these tools. So for everybody who's trying to set up governance rules, it's really difficult to do that if they start doing it too late in the process. So in general, these anticipatory governance issues, they get more and more complex the shorter the innovation cycles are. And with generative AI, we're in a really fast spin of innovation cycles here. So what is my conclusion out of this? I think we know enough at this point of how this may work or could work. We know a lot about the relational ecosystem of our knowledge productions, and we have a map out there that kind of gives the parameters, at least, of this new tool. We know how widely used AI is, and I mean, Alketa has referred to the Nature survey there, and we can all ask around scholars and look at ourselves, and we will see that it's really widely used. So I think what we need now, I think we will continue doing all this research and we will find out great things. What we need now, I think, is judgment, and I'm using that term deliberately. We need judgment now to develop the norms and the practices of what we think is desirable and appropriate use of AI. And not everything we can do with it, we should do with it. Not everything is desirable. So I think we know enough to start this process now. And this means like this has a who, a what, and a how component to it. A who as who sits on the table. And I think several of the people who should sit on the table are here in this room, or representatives are here in this room. It's the scholarly associations. And I mean, IFSAM is a scholarly association of scholarly associations, but there will be others. There's the editors, there's the publishers, there's the universities, there are intermediaries like COPI and so on. So I think we can set this off. The what do we have to decide here is where and how can generative AI be used in the scholarly knowledge process? How do we monitor? What are the specifics of the different fields? In our case of the social sciences and the organization and management research. The ethics and what happens in cases of deceit, fraud, misconduct, etc. And how often do we revisit our governance codes and tools? And the how, I think this is a deliberation process, and we also have a lot of knowledge on how to set up a deliberation process, and I think we should do it. So whatever we come up with will not be perfect, but it will be a start, and we will revisit and we will change. But as in anticipatory governance challenges, I think we need to start soon, and we should start soon. I think we know enough to start this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Renate, for sharing your thoughts. There was a lot of reflection, as always, from you. Thank you very much. Lots of food for thought. And before we go into the Q&A and involving our great audience, I give the word to Ziad. Ziad, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christine. Just thinking, actually, as you were finishing, Renata, this question, this anticipatory governance gap you mentioned, it reminds me of this line that when you see exponential change, you either react too quickly or too late. I think we're in great danger of reacting too late in this case. We're dealing with radical uncertainty. I do have some slides, but I just wanted to say, just a point to pick up, Christina, you mentioned that AI goes back 10 years and there's many kinds of AI, and that's absolutely true. I do feel that there's something interesting and distinctive about the rise of generative AI and the large language models in particular. Just on that general point about social scientists dealing with computation, big data, technology, years ago, Sage launched a whole thing called Sage Ocean with a whole bunch of courses to help bridge that gap, to help people with Python for social scientists and whatever. So we've definitely been attuned for a long time at Sage for the need to enable social scientists to work with sort of AI and computation more generally. But I think the reason we're noting this as distinctive is that this feels to me sort of beyond natural language models. A large language model is a generator of new content. And therefore, if you're in the business of the transmission of ideas, whether in the HE sector generally or in publishing, as in our case, more specifically, I think it's potentially game-changing. We see so many students now writing their essays with it and so on. It's actually generative, and if we're in the world of disseminating ideas, this is another sort of generation of those ideas that will change the game potentially quite profoundly. And so my focus is going to be on large language models and Chat-GPT, but I want to look at that in terms of SAGE's response. And since, as Christina also said, we should think about the objects of study and maybe study how technology is being responded to in organizations. Maybe if I, by giving a couple of practical examples of how we're responding, can offer up SAGE as a potential case study of how some organizations are responding at a time of radical uncertainty. I'm going to start sharing slides here. Is that good? Okay, thanks. So yeah, looking at sort of the implications of research and education, but a view from publishing. And I want to start with the sense of the you know, we've talked a bit about already the black box and the uncertainty. And my favorite prompt, everyone's hearing about prompt engineering these days, but my favorite prompt of all the various is the one that DeepMind worked out for Chat-GPT using their own AI, different kind of AI, to actually prompt Chat-GPT to get better at maths. The prompt is, take a deep breath before you answer. And so that's now it's now in the literature as a way of enhancing the ability for it to respond. And I pointed out as an example because to me it's indicative of how relatively mysterious what's going on inside these multi-billion parameter driven backpropagation models we're dealing with here. And this sort of everyone going from sort of autocomplete to this is like a form of intelligence emerging. It feels to me like there isn't any settled science here. The phrase people use all the time is engineering is running ahead of the science. And so there isn't really a conceptual frame. And I've been going to conferences since March, really. I think for me, the switch was the release of GPT-4, which felt like an exponential shift from its predecessors. And so I've been going to conferences close to philosophy and ethics, but all the way through to implications for education and research. And so, but I think however many of these conferences I go to, I conclude that we're dealing in an age of radical uncertainty. And so the main preface I want to offer is, I don't know. So with that said, I asked ChatGPT to do a SWOT. On the right, just for fun, I asked DALL-E also to do an image of the SWOT that it created, and you can show that DALL-E doesn't even adequately deal with text, so there's just a bunch of nonsense jumbles on the right. But on the left, the actual, the kind of, you know, so ChatGPT came up with, I said just very simple examples, but of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And in there we see the various aspects, I think, what we're talking about. And obviously this webinar is really around sort of perils and promise. And I think the perils are fairly well detailed. We've already heard about some of them under the weaknesses, from policy concerns and bias down to the threat to data privacy and so on. But also there's the question of the promise, which I want to lean more towards in this part. So that really, is there a way that SAGE can respond a bit more to there is a promise? If I was going to be more comprehensive on the risks, I would point out one very big thing, which is something you're probably all aware of, which is the extent to which people are using large language model or ChatGPT to actually create papers. And this particular Nature article gives one example of a paper that was, see the prompts at the bottom of it, so it was obvious that it was done. So it's not just the students who are using it, but obviously researchers, and you know, and everyone is in their different ways. I mean, I've just used it on my last slides. That's not me. That saved me time, so a brief productivity gain. But the point is, we potentially, we already worry about the kind of flood of misinformation. Well, now if you can generate artificial papers at 10,000 times a minute, I think there could be a really profound implication. But that's enough of the perils. I'm just going to talk to the kind of trying to attempt to be the kind of response that we're having at Sage. We're trying to be constructive and open. We're trying to be in a spirit of exploration and discovery, while conscious that we're not in a hurry to kind of release or embed sort of really concrete outcomes. It's more just to be capable and prepared so that we're able to respond as this fast-flowing field emerges. But there are three broad categories that we kind of spend our time talking about. The first is around productivity, like chucking up that SWOT, and individual personal productivity. We have a working group who are exploring those opportunities. Jasper mentioned below is an AI that helps augment marketing efforts. And so writing blurbs, press releases, various kinds of things can be done now very well with Jasper. Under publishing strategy, I think a lot of questions here about the nature of our content, the issue we discussed earlier about guidelines to authors. When can it be an author? When do you declare? What is and obviously issues around the nature of intellectual property, who's harvesting which data. A lot of it has been harvested, but so there's a lot of sort of questions under publishing strategy as well. And then the bit I was going to just dwell on briefly with two examples was product strategy. And here the question is, are there ways of enhancing our products that take advantage of what generative AI can do to make the experience of using them more effective? So I'm going to pick two. One is Hyper, this Hubro AI powder assessment tool. And then I want to mention the hackathon briefly. So on the first then, Hubro is I thought I'd pick this example because it relates to business and management teaching. And so it's we bought this company Hubro a few months ago in the summer, and they are based in Norway, and they are business simulations providers. So they are developing business simulations for courses and everything from strategy to marketing to sustainable leadership and so on. But they have announced in the light of this, this thing on the top right, the Hyper Hubro AI powered assessment. And the idea is very simply that you give all these simulations to all these students, and then you give them assignments to work within. Write me a business plan for this organization or whatever it is. The student answers that. And the idea is that, especially for courses which are massive, like there's 1,000 students or more, you can get the AI to evaluate that assignment, and then you can go on to providing scores and feedback to the student directly. You can either go via the instructor and back, or you go straight through, and then the student obviously has a chance to challenge that score. And then we're in the space of actually potentially the instructor accepting the score, etc. The idea is it's potentially a huge enablement of assignment. It is assessment. We've been testing this with various sort of co-constructing with various people who are using Hubro products already, and we're not going into it knowing it's a good answer. There's interesting questions about how do you tweak the strictness of the scoring, and sort of the human feedback piece is vital to the local training. It's very much AI within the environment of the simulation, so it's not susceptible to abuse in certain kinds of ways. But it's again a learning by doing. We don't know if it's going to be a good thing or not, but I think it's a way of trying to bring some of these ideas to sort of concrete reality. So broadening that point, we did this hackathon I mentioned. We had about 50 people for 2.5 days, a lot of them software engineers at Sage, really kind of addressing 7 different problem domains. And again, in the spirit of open-minded, curious, exploratory, and not in a dash to try and build something that's worthy of release anywhere, but more learning by doing. That's sort of the way we're trying to respond creatively within our organization. And the kind of areas they ended up exploring was developing a tool to help with discovery, or a chat interface for querying content, or a tool to help student comprehension, summarization, that kind of thing. a thing called Peer Pal, I'll spend 1 minute on after this, which is helping reviewers peer review. A translation tool to try and build something at much higher level of translation, like 90% plus, rather than to the Google Translate level, and a research assistant to help guide everyone on a research program from defining their problem domain through to the techniques to use and so on, which plugs into Sage research methods and the methods map that we have. So all, again, ways of looking at how to augment and enhance our product, and then pick out the Peer Pal just so you have a visualization of it. The articles on the left, you are now doing a peer review of this, and then it has this interaction with you to help you speed up the review and potentially augment the review, enable you to do it. But as Renata was saying earlier, it's always a good question about what is appropriate practice. And in this case, you don't want to get to the point where you've crossed the line where the actual AI is doing the review, especially if the AI has written the article in the first place. You could end up in a really quite crazy doom loop. So I'm just closing now by saying that we're making various assumptions that, one, higher education will change, that what people need will change, that we need to experiment and pilot, that we need to think about how we intersect with vendors in this space, who are a lot of this doing nothing but their particular use case, and it's very crowded, and so working out how. And of course, internally, roles will change, that our own duty of care to our staff is about preparing them, and so part of the logic here is familiarization and skilling up so that people can take advantage of opportunities to augment their skill. But I end, as I began, by saying we are dealing with extreme uncertainty, and so to finish on that from Speldian quote, there are also unknown unknowns. There are things we do not know, we don't know. That said, to Renata's point, that we'll be potentially needing to avoid a crisis of trust in a sea of information. I do hope that it will be all the more vital for organizations of various kinds, and I include Sage in that, to be markers of integrity and quality. In the end, for us, it all works only if we can retain that reputation. That's all I have to say.
Thanks so much, Ziad, and thanks so much to the 4 panelists that inspired and stretched our imagination of what we could do and or should not do with AI, or how to do it with or on it, as well as how to stretch it across the different geographies and academic domains. At this point, we would like to invite you all who are sharing this cyberspace with us to join the conversation. And you can do it either directly by letting us know that you want to pose a question, or you can actually pose a question in the chat. We will be monitoring the chat as well for your inputs. But anybody who would like to pose a question in the open. Yeah, Martin?
Thanks, Sylvia. Fantastic set of presentations. I've popped the question in the chat, actually, but I'm working on AI adoption in medium-sized law and accountancy firms, and we're working with amongst a few academics, a non-academic technology consultant, and he's very excited by the possibility of small and medium-sized firms having access to Microsoft package, Power Automate, things like this, and suddenly having access to very powerful tools for their whatever it is, £15 a month subscription, or maybe it's a bit more than that, but you get the idea. So from an IFSAM point of view, I wonder whether what you think about the possibility of these developments leveling up, if you like, making more powerful tools available to less developed countries along the lines Alketa was talking about. Will it level the playing field a bit for management research, or the opposite, or both, or what?
Thanks so much, Martin. Anybody from the panelists who would like to chip in on Martin's question?
I could just mention a couple of things as far as from the actual case that Martin's describing, which is looking at these small and medium enterprises and the sense of excitement. And I would just warn that I think there might be some disappointment before there's something can be converted on a number of fronts. So the main MS package is Microsoft Copilot, which has been much advertised for a long time. It's going to transform your daily life. And first of all, the date for getting it is going further and further back. Second of all, the claims about exactly how robust it'll be is an open question. And third of all, it's going to be very, very expensive. So in terms of just, we have to think about the Gartner hype cycle to some extent, and there could be some moments of despondency after the hype for some organizations, I suspect.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Renate also has her hand.
I mean, this is a really good question, and something we learn about much more. I think what you also address is the question of the databases that these AI tools tap into, and where there's a monetary boundary to them. So what we're talking about here is intellectual property rights and securing intellectual property rights. Because like currently the way generative AI often works is that it feeds from all kinds of data sources, and it's not always 100% clear kind of where confidentiality lies, where property rights lie, and so on. So this idea of making a paywall around certain intellectual property and knowledge is interesting, but of course it asks all sorts of other questions as well. I mean, in a way, these tools democratize knowledge by making it accessible for a lot of people. At the same time, they deprofessionalize professions, which can be good or bad. I mean, there's different things. I think the assumption that it will level the field, I'm not so sure about. It will probably level some mountains down, but it will definitely build up others. So there will be a lot of new inequalities that will come up in a system like that. So I would strongly doubt that we end up with a more equal world with these new tools.
Thank you so much, Renate. And Christina has also her hand.
Yeah, very interesting point. And perhaps I would like to answer by going back to a couple of the points that I was making in my presentation. And one is on the political economy of AI. And in this case, generative AI. It's true that we know lots of things, but there are also lots of things we don't know, such as how the ecosystem of organizations around the production of generative AI works, and therefore what kind of opportunities will be offered to small players at what kind of prices. And I don't mean only, of course, the price like the monthly price, but I also mean in terms of control and autonomy. And that is something that if we don't go back and study the network, the ecosystems of small, medium, very large enterprises that are involved in the productions of these tools, tools that are used to sustain this tool, infrastructure that are used to sustain this tool, we will not be able to answer, because that's the main issue, right? These are also, we all have followed what has happened with OpenAI in these last few weeks. It was crazy. I mean, we had a lot, and we have a lot of study on how generative AI work, but we don't have any study yet on how the organizations behind generative AI work, and that's also our job. So one point I would like to make is, let's also focus on understanding, what organizational and political economy constraints and opportunity will condition something like democratization, open level playing field, access to this tool, to whom, for what reason, at what price. That's very interesting. We don't know. I don't feel like I can sort of saying anything, definitive on that, but I can say that we are missing, for instance, this piece of knowledge in order to say something. And the second point I would like to go back to is the historical perspective. When I feel that sometimes we forget the recent past, I don't mean that, generative AI is not new, on the contrary, but I think that one way of learning, or at least of inquiry and analyzing what is new here, is also to make comparison about what has happened with recent innovation. So, and we know, like from the internet and then other digital innovation after that, that this issue of access is also very delicate, and it has turn and twist depending, for instance, on the stakeholder that enter in the process. And now regulator will be a huge stakeholder, and regulation will condition very much to what extent the power balance between big organizations and small organization will unfold. So the second point is, I think that in order to understand what is going on and what is new here, let's also have a look at what has happened. And not to say that there is nothing new, on the contrary, but to say what is it new and what it isn't in what we are living through. And in this way, perhaps we can also answer to the question of, okay, perhaps the condition these conditions have changed, but these other have not changed at all.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. And that brings also the issue of how long do these processes of transformation take? I mean, there was a lot of commenting on how fast this new phenomenon is developing, and how much it's morphing and opening new opportunities and perils. At the same time, implementing it in ways in the organization that it is meaningful may take a longer time and may require a lot more understanding of both intended and unintended consequences. And also, to pick on your other point, is there new knowledge about organizing, about how these AI companies function, but also what could be an AI first organization, organization that is built on a completely different background or principle, that can also be very informative for scholarship on organization. And I see that Alketa has had a patient hand on the chat. So sorry, Alketa, and the floor is now yours.
No, it's a pleasure to wait and to listen to the reflections. Well, I kind of share the assumptions that I don't see on what grounds the AI technologies will kind of help us to level up or combat existing inequalities. I do not think that we can affirm, based on what we've seen in terms of recent trends, anything that kind of is pointing out toward this direction. On the contrary, I do see a lot of space for more power inequality, more divisions between and conflicts. And I also will bring another third actor, which are the state actors, the public sector, how it deal with this, rearrangement of and power shifts vis-a-vis global corporations that already were mentioned in our talk. I do think that we need to build something around what Renat had advocated about, the governance system. So we need to have something here. It will not be perfect, but I mean, it's necessary to allow for flexibility, but it's necessary to have something in order to have more fair play. And I have a suggestion. I do think that we probably, among WEIR associations, we can overtake a survey, sharing the same survey within our own association, so we can have like a starting point, how members of each associations in different parts of the world kind of, are perceiving those trends, what type of challenges they see ahead, and what type of opportunities they also, see coming from this new development. So this survey that might be shared between members of different associations and organizations can serve as a kicking off point, start to, for a more, I would not say evidence-based governance model, because still there will be perceptions, but at least we'll have evidence about if there are already some disparities, different views, different perspectives, different forms of, seeing what's coming in the future in terms of the technology. So this might be something that we can think within IFSAM and articulate with our own associations, individual associations.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alketa. Certainly a lot of opportunity across 30 academic associations across all continents to feel the pulse. And maybe we can think of what could be a quick enough process that allows us to design such a consultation and to roll it out and learn from it as we move forward. Other questions or comments? Other points of view? We also want to invite the audience. Again, our panelists are very generous, but we also want to tap to all the knowledge that resides, knowledge, experience, playful anecdotes you have had trying to push the boundaries of these technologies or to engage in bridling it or governing its powers.
I think that Robert had his hand up, or was that accidental? Robert?
No, it wasn't. I'm sorry. Thank you, Christina. So, may I ask my question, please?
Please.
Yeah. So, first of all, thank you to all the panelists for a brilliant session. I think, as such, it was quite a dense sort of variation of themes and topics on the issue of AI. My reflection is on our own role as co-producers of content for AI, both as prompters, so to speak, but also as general creators of content, which at some point end up in AI tools. What's your reflection on that?
Yeah, thank you, Robert. So this is more like bringing the authors in us, right? and
exactly.
And thinking from that perspective, and I think all of you are authors. Our panelists have significant authorship. So taking this personal role rather than the more organizational lens to what it means, that would be also a very interesting layer of insight. Thank you, Robert, and I invite the authors, panelists, and any other authors in the audience to author a comment. Anybody who would dare to kind of share this personal frontier.
Maybe I start. I think that this is something. There's an interesting tension between being a co-author and co-producer of their products and our tendency to open data and open access, because everything that is placed there is freely accessible. So in the sense, by uploading things and by making things accessible, we implicitly agree on these things being used by generative AI for their products. I think we can maybe think about this, if this is actually what we actually wanted to do, and if this is what open access is supposed to deliver, being material. What I think is an interesting boundary is the confidentiality of things where the authors actually have not agreed that their material is open access. And this is something that I think we need to, that will be part of this kind of norms and practices that I think we need to come up with. So, for example, uploading a paper that somebody receives for a review is unethical, in my view. That's my personal take, because the authors who sent this paper to a journal have never agreed on this being fed into a huge database where large language models can actually draw on it. So that is something that either you need to ask the authors if they agree, or you have to have a limit around what certain AI can draw on. And then, of course, you can have internal whatever usage, and some companies have this kind of boundaries around the data that they can use. But these are kind of things. But what I observe now is that people kind of upload basically everything. They upload every stuff that they come across, they prompt the things, they send it in, write something about it without actually realizing what you were saying, Robert, that this feeds into the database, that you are data as much as user in these kind of systems. And this kind of conflation of roles, that's what I meant with like, we use it as subject, object, tool and so on, and these kind of things are getting blurrier and blurrier. But that is definitely something I think we need to consider, and that is, and there has to be a boundary, and the author of something has to agree on this being data and not somebody who uses it or comes across and just feeds it into the system. But currently I don't see that this is very widespread or that there is a clear norm about this, because if I ask my students, and I did ask them what they do with generative AI, you would be surprised to hear all the things that they are actually feeding into the system without any kind of problem at all. So
Yeah, thank you so much, Renate. And really very important, this blurring of roles and blurring of boundaries that can violate the rights of multiple actors in multiple unintended and intended ways. And I see Ziad's hand.
Yes, thanks. First thought is, so much for this has been done. The harvesting and the training has been done. So there's a sort of part of when I see the various moves within the publishers associations or the authors and editors groups, often it's about trying to get retrospective compensation because the permission, it was already done with that permission. Then a debate about whether it constitutes an infringement of copyright to train. But the argument is that it very clearly does, at least on the publisher and author side. And also on your point, Renato, about paywalls, I don't think we even know exactly how far they've gone, because we know there are pirate sites. We know that all paywalled content is sort of gettable. And so have they gone into all the sort of these gray area spaces and harvested all the institutional repositories where people may have uploaded an author-accepted version of a manuscript? So I think let's understand the scale of what's already happened, which is kind of alarming. What we're we've got a couple of things that we're thinking about. One is the thing that so many people are trying to do, which is work out whether you can have a controlled large language model that's tuned on your own data and bound within. So the promise of Microsoft Copilot is that it'll be bound within an organization, and therefore you can analyze your own data, and without feeling that you're now training the next iteration of GPT-5. And then the other thing is around putting metadata in all the content, so that when the machine starts to read it, the first thing it sees in the metadata is this is not for using in training models without permission, without express permission of the author. Again, it's an experimental thing that we're talking about rolling out across all of our content. But I do feel the main thing is they've seen it and eaten it already, and they're ready to go multimodal next. So they run out of words. So now they're talking about going into harvesting podcasts, harvesting video. So the actual range of data sources is going to get ferociously enhanced.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ziad. Any other comments? Yeah, I see Christina.
Just a couple of reflection for a very important question, and I would say like huge question. The first reflection is on the fact that, Robert, you asked author and prompter already. So I really sort of did that, made me think immediately about the fact that perhaps the notion of authorship as we have known it so far, it will not be existing, you know, as we have known so far any longer, as you know, the breakdown of different roles within this authorship that has remained something very much bounded will happen over and over again as we gain different competencies and we interact with different tools. For instance, we will be prompter. We are already a little bit reviewers, writers, and, you know, for instance, educators. So this will happen as even more so as we integrate different tools in our work. So we'll become prompter, we'll become author, we'll become, you know, many other things. So this is something that, of course, we don't know to what extent will happen, but surely something along this line, the change of the notion of authorship will happen. Now, I'm also terrified by what Renate was saying. I mean, how, you know, to what extent we feed, and to what extent other feeds, and to what extent, you know, what has been thought as being available, it has instead become the resource upon which a new kind of closure, if you want, or reinterpretation or reproduction circuit now is initiated. On the other hand, there is a counterpart to this, which is, if this will be the way in which visibility and knowledge will also be constructed, this will ask us also to reframe and try to understand how can we save the children, you know, and not throwing it out also with the water. Can we do that? How can we do that? So it's even more complex than it, and perhaps more terrifying, Renate, on what you were saying. Because on the one hand, if you are not fed into the system, you may disappear somehow. So, and not gaining accessibility at all. On the other hand, you cannot have anything, you know, being fed without control or without boundaries or without level of governance or access or rules. So, yeah, just a couple of reflection, I'm afraid, very incomplete and very sort of rough.
Thank you so much, Christina. And from Christina to Christine.
Thanks, Sylvia. Yeah, I was just listening to all of you, and somehow the question that really comes up is, which problem is this stuff actually solving? If, for example, Aketa says, no, inequality will actually become worse, access will be worse, knowledge production, who knows, big corporations are involved. So maybe it's really time to go back to the drawing board and think about which problem have we actually now been solving? Did we have a problem in the profession with people not being able to write? Not so sure. Do we have a problem with people not being able to write reviews? Maybe, I don't know. So in a sense, I think what I like about this whole is definitely about the conversation, but also the entire development is that it really, I think, forces us to reflect on what are actually these values that we are working on. Because if Siad actually said what's already going on, you know, people use technology to write the papers, then we use technology to review them, then somebody will invent an editor technology which will then reject them or accept them. What's the point? And of course, because given the technology, as far as I understand it, and I'm not a computer scientist, but there's the new input is limited, right? It's using data that has been created in the past, of which we do not know what kind of data, when, and so on. So there's no, I'm not sure if there's, or let's say the extent of newness is at least limited. So what's the point? I think that for me is a major takeaway of today. But I don't want to close yet. So Sylvia, back to you.
Yeah, we have a few moments left, and I want to take on this point. What's the point? And I see Alketa has a point and Renate has a point. So both of you are welcome to share your point.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we probably are facing the dilemma of other social networks access to, I mean, to all the people. We know the role of, you know, Facebook for Brexit. We already know, I mean, how big corporations and others can manipulate the input into the systems for other kind of uses. And I think this is the ethical dilemma that we're also facing in our field. I don't know if we can have any regulatory or governance measures to face that, because some of these issues are transboundary issues. And I mean, it's not a Brazilian issue, it's not a, you know, European issue, it's more than that. It takes, you know, a huge collaboration. And again, I think the inequalities are also feeding the system. Having said that, I think we need to recognize a role for, I don't think that still the machines are taking over the human cognitions. I mean, in my experience in working with topic modeling in qualitative research, I have seen the limits of this research. I do see I've seen the opportunities. I mean, the fact that you can handle immense amounts of data qualitatively that you couldn't handle before, this is a huge opportunity. And I've seen also the limit of the comprehensions of the machine. So the need to still, feed on human that are trained as researchers to understand the human dilemma. And this is one of the key points that I wanted to make in my previous research. I'm very much worried in the access that is being limited to our research toward actual real data, human data in the world. So access to interviewing people, to asking questions to people, to see how the organizations work. We are so much fascinated with the potentials of these big, huge databases and we are so much restricting in our, review boards, ethical boards, etc., access to people, which I do think was our strength as a researcher up to these days, I think we need to be careful on that. So our governance, our regulatory measures are too tough, to giving access to researchers, to organizations, to people, etc. They are very permissive in terms of the use of artificial intelligence technologies, because we don't have any regulation or governance measures there. So the AI is kind of getting terrain in that. So it's much easier to publish something today based on this type of data. And it's very much complicated to publish research today based on all the demands that you face in alternative type of data. And my third reflections, what are the implications for tenure, for new researchers, etc., in the systems? We don't know. But again, there is an equal power distribution also in terms of that. And I think we need to think of, what are the implications for the future of the research in our field and the future of academic trajectories in our field. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alketa, for these wonderful reflections. I see Renate's hand has gone down, but I'm not sure that's a signal. We have 1 minute, Renate, so you can definitely nail it down.
I thought I wanted to leave the last 2 minutes for your summary.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot. So I think what we notice is a lot of energy. I don't want to say a lot of hype. Hopefully it's not hype. Hopefully it's a lot of positive, generative human energy that in a thoughtful and kind of productive way will channel these new opportunities and will govern the perils or the risk, or will be reflective enough to anticipate kind of unethical behaviors. Before closing down, on behalf of Christina and my own behalf, and of course of IFSAM, we wanted to thank you all for spending these 90 generous minutes of your life with us. To the panelists who brought a lot of exciting food for thought and very rich reflection that will, I'm sure, continue spinning in our heads, in our thoughts in the days to come. To the IFSAM VP of Events and his team. So thank you, Martin. Thank you, Robert. Thank you also, Elisa, Eleonora, for making the impossible possible for us to be here today. And as a commitment, given that this initiative was initiated as one of our commitments to action, Christina and I will bring to the IFSAM board tomorrow Renate's, Alketa's, Christina's, Ziad's comments, and we will initiate something around anticipatory governance based based on scholarly input. And we will, of course, definitely like to get any other input you may have had as an audience, as a panelist, that will go into this coming initiative, and we will definitely keep you posted. I don't know, Christina, if you want to add something.
Yes, I would. Thank you also from my side, for everybody, also our patient audience. And what I would really like to add is that having different stakeholders in our ecosystem or our field at the table, it does anytime we do something like this, I learn so much. So thanks all of you, and thanks also for engaging with the other stakeholders, which is maybe not something that we usually spend our time with, but I do feel it's very valuable. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, and we hope to see you at other IFSAM events. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye all.
Thank you all.
Thank you very
Bye,
much.
everybody.
You
Thanks
and all
again.
the panelists.
Bye.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye bye.